Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting of January 31st, 2024. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Can I get a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Councillor Bradsey. Member Potter. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Member Potter. Resolved that the January 31st, 2024 Planning and Development Committee agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Bianca, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give a quick update on the heritage minutes. So I have the December 12th and the January 9th minutes. So both of these have been brought forward to council because there was no planning committee in between, and we had 2 statutory items. So because of that, I just wanted to give you a quick update on what went through. So in December, we had a heritage permit for Nels Manor. They were proposing to replace the existing cedar shake with a composite roofing material. So we worked with them very closely to look at samples and things like that to get something as close to the historic material. And then they're going to decide as a board which to go with, the composite material or replacing with cedar. And we were supportive of both options. And in addition to that, they also have a porch at the back that's used as an entrance for the public with a failing railing. So they're going to do the railing, but they used a Georgian style pattern that would have historically been used at the dwelling, and they're going to be replacing the new railing with a similar style. And then that was approved with conditions from council, and those conditions included photo documentation, them completed in accordance with the conservation management plan, and that, so this is a provincially designated property, so that the comments from the advisory committee, staff, and council be shared with the province. And so we're now working with Nels Manor to get their provincial heritage permit. And then we also started talking about street names again in December. And so we were looking for a street name for the development, the approved development next to Forens Marina. And so the Grimsby Historical Society provided names, and the committee had requested that the Grimsby Historical Society provide some Indigenous options, but we've talked with the Grimsby Historical Society since, and they've noted that significant consultation should be done before we pursue any names. So when the transportation management plan or master plan is completed, we will put together a formal street naming process, and Indigenous and other parties will be consulted at that time to see if there's other names we can use in the community. And so for that one, Hands Inlet was approved by council. And then in December, 3 designations went forward. And since the council approved the issuing of 3 notice of intentions to designate, and those are out right now. So that's the December one. And then in January, we talked again about that street name request, and that's when Hands Inlet was selected by the committee and then subsequently approved by council. The statutory timeline item was 9 Adelaide. 9 Adelaide is an accessory, and originally it would have been an accessory building to 7 Adelaide. And so we did a full evaluation against the criteria, and the building did not meet the criteria for designation. And so that was approved with conditions that they provide photo documentation to the Grimsby Historical Society and to staff. And so that is now removed from the Municipal Heritage Register. And then at the January meeting, we also had 3 designations. And those have since gone to council, and they have directed us to issue the notice of intention to designate, and those are out right now as well. And I was just going to note that St. Andrew's Church and all of those associated buildings went forward in December, so that was really exciting. And then we had some really great buildings on Main Street West, the Grimsby Independent, the original one, and then Jonathan Wolverton's house also went. And then 34 Mountain, which was the first mayor of Grimsby, or town of Grimsby. Yeah, so that's everything from my update.
Great, thank you very much, Bianca. Any questions or comments from? All right, Member Potter?
Thank you, Bianca. Sorry, it's always backtracking so far. So just a couple of, I don't know about for interest, but just for my education more than anything. So on your December the 12th one with regard to Nell's Manor, fine, it is what it is. But the photo documentation, where do they get stored? Who keeps those nowadays?
Thank you, through the chair. So we keep those on file. And then we also have a great working relationship with the Grimsby Historical Society. And so we like to make sure they also have a copy.
If I may, just a couple of others, Mayor. I don't need a full story, but the proposed name for the street name request of Hand Inlet, apart from the obvious connotation, why? What was so specific about that name? What's the indigenous connection explicitly, if you like?
Through the chair, so it wasn't an indigenous name that was selected. We're going to look at that down the road. Hands Inlet was selected because of the association with the Hands family and their cottages that used to be in that area. So within it came as a recommendation report. There was an attachment from the Grimsby Historical Society, and it had the full history of that name. So yeah, it's in the heritage agenda. I can also send that over to you, but it's the Hands family.
Thank you. No, it's useful. I mean, I like to celebrate the history of these places, and if you can do that by names, as long as, in 10 years' time we're not regretting that selection because of other information. Under your 9 Adelaide, I got a bit confused with the minutes, basically, but that's maybe my, there's a lot more in the meeting. What's the need? You talk about the vibration monitoring devices to add to 7 Adelaide, and then the second paragraph or sentence more, the staff be provided access to the glass in epoxy through the duration of the demolition. I don't understand the English there, to be blunt. So if you clarify, that'd be useful.
No problem. Through you, the chair. So this was a committee recommendation that this condition be added. So something we've been doing in Grimsby is when we have adjacent construction being done or demolition, what we do is we go to the heritage resource and we look at the foundation for a settlement crack. And then using traditional methods, we use epoxy and we attach glass on either side of the crack so that if vibration is occurring during the demolition, if we see that glass crack, then we know movement is occurring and we can tell them to lower the vibrations. So that's something we've just been using as to give us something as a baseline. But that's also something that could just stay on the building if the property owners want it, and then they can continue to monitor their building. And then the access being provided to staff is to see if the glass cracks.
Thank you for that. Just, I just look at minutes, if you're looking back, years ago and kind of like, what does that mean? So I'd suggest a little bit more clarity and text should be added there so it's not so cryptic, and for people that may be reading this in the future that don't have your knowledge on that sort of thing. For me, without that background, I don't make sense of this wording personally, but that's just me. One other, probably not trying to make this an awkward question, but I know there's a strong desire to protect heritage in the town, and I know a lot of things have moved forward. What's the approximate cost of designating a property from a cradle to grave, if you like? or from a legal regulatory point of view, whatever you want to call it, through the registry, basically. Do you have that number?
Through the chair, so all of the work for the designations are done in-house. So all the research and everything is conducted here. The only cost is to put it in the paper. And so we have one newspaper that we put it in, and that's legislated. Eventually down the road, when the bylaws are registered, those are the only costs.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Bianca, thank you first for the update. Just a quick question with Hands Inlet. I know we talked to the Historical Society, but have we touched base with any of the members of the Hand family that are still in town?
Through the chair, I haven't spoken to the Hands family just yet. I can do that if we want to have more history associated with the name. So I can happily do that. But we do have a record of a base record, I guess, of their family, but we're always willing to take more information. So I can definitely reach out. That's a great idea.
All right, thank you very much for your report, Bianca. Need a mover and seconder for the following minutes. Moved by Member Drew, seconded by Member Bradzi. Moved by Member Drew, second by Member Bradzi. Resolved that the following minutes be received. Planning and Development Committee, December 11th, 2023. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, December 12th, 2023. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, January 9th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have no delegations, no consent reports. Discussion report. We have a discussion report outlining the update on the official plan review. Can I have a mover and seconder to get it on the floor? Moved by Member Bradzi, second by Member Drew. Hi, Terry. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Okay, oh, perfect. We just have a short presentation to walk you through the report. Next slide. Okay, so where we are in the official plan process, you can see up here, there's basically 5 phases. So this is basically the completion of phase 1. So we did a number of engagement activities, which I'll explain in a few minutes. So this is basically the culmination of all of that work. And one of our big questions for visioning was really, what do people see Grimsby look like by 2051? So that was a big focus of the questions. So right now, we have just started the policy directions phase. And last week, we had our first town talks meeting. And next week, we will have 2 additional town talks meetings where we're talking about, last week was about housing and affordability. Next week is going to be about work and workplaces, as well as neighborhood planning. So next slide. So we used a number of engagement, we call them tactics, that we reached out to folks in the community. So we had a number of pop-up events. We had them at the farmers market. We had one at the PKC, and we also had one here. We've been to council meetings. We had the public hearing on October 24th. There's a large online survey. We've had some mapping tools that were available, just asking people what they like, what they don't like, what can be improved. There's the project website, so Let's Talk Grimsby page is filled with information, and that is really our go-to where we're putting everything for the official plan. We've done a number of stakeholder outreach with all of our agencies and a wide variety of community groups as well to just try and get the word out, and also try and get people aware of the plan and engage with the plan, and also provide their input. And then we also outreached to a number of our Indigenous communities in the area to see if they had any initial thoughts and suggestions for the plan. Next slide. So these are some of the key themes that we heard back. Housing affordability definitely is a key theme. So wondering if people's children can afford to buy a place or a home in the town, or being able to stay long-term, whether if they are renting now, if they will be able to afford the opportunity to own a place. And some of the options here are like what people were looking at is like potential for new development, lowering taxes, and potentially expanding residential areas. And these are just the ideas from the community. There's no judgment on these. Transportation came up a lot, especially in the increasing traffic. I think we've had a lot of QEW closures and the impact that has on the town itself. GO rail timing came up often. Also, a desire for active transportation. A number of people thought some solutions would be improving transit, the use of more multi-use paths, bike lanes, and more parking downtown often came up. Another one was parks and public space. It was one of the most popular priorities, actually, that people talked about of what they love about Grimsby. And they want more parks, they want more paths, and they want improved access to the waterfront, and really more planting and investment in natural areas. Another topic was new development and growth. It came up quite often, and there's really an even split that from the engagement we did. Some people are very excited about the new growth potential, and some people worry about the impacts of it and what the impact will be on the long-term character of Grimsby. A lot of people saw benefits with new growth, with like the opportunity for more restaurants, a variety of different types of restaurants, having a stronger tax base to share the load of taxes, having more housing types to fit through their needs. And then some people were concerned about potential for crime and losing the potential for that neighborhood friendliness that they currently feel, and also the potential for community disconnection where they don't know their neighbors as well. So it's that fear of something changing. And then the last one was really downtown. A lot of people talked about the importance of downtown, the heritage of it, the farmers market coming there, and the restaurants as a draw. They also want more restaurants. They talked about walking and biking connections, better hours for some of the businesses, and just more parking. Parking came up a lot as well. Next slide. So this is, we had a large survey, and these are some of the results from it. So we had 79 people provide their responses, and honestly, looking at some of the demographics for it, it was pretty across the board. So there was a big range of ages, economic groups, so it was pretty diverse response that way. But 86% of people owned their own home. 52% of people cited the cost as the reason why it's difficult to find a place to live. But 48% found it easy to find a place to live. So I guess that depends on when they got their house too, right? 22% found finding a place to live difficult or very difficult. So that sometimes talks about the timing of when they were looking for a home. On the right-hand side, you can see some components about transportation. So most people drive. A lot of people walk frequently or sometimes. Very few bike with only 27%, and transportation ranked the third highest priority amongst the survey respondents, with 20% suggesting more bike lanes and pathways, as we talked about. Next slide. So for growth, as I mentioned, it's sort of a balanced split of people embracing growth and slowing growth. And some people were looking at expansion potential for the residential areas. For parks, natural, and public spaces, those came up often, and people really want to see more, with 20% of respondents identifying improvements to them as a big priority. They want more stuff. They want enhanced components of those things. And that's the next one as well. Next slide. For climate change, there were a number of people who felt that there's a decline in biodiversity, water quality, and air quality, and those were their top concerns. But a lot of people also said that the most popular idea for adapting to climate change was protecting Grimsby's natural open space. For the downtown, again, restaurants came up often. In every way we approached the community, restaurants came up often. And also heritage buildings were a very popular topic, especially when we're talking about downtown. Next. So that is basically what we heard report, and you can see it online. This is what it looks like, the front cover looks like, but it's available online. There's also in your second one is a working draft of the vision and guiding principles. And these are a very working draft. So this is just something to react to, but it will be front refined as we go through our policy directions, because now we're getting to more detail as we get into a finer grain. So there'll be an increased opportunity to consider these and make sure they really fit what we want to see in the draft plan itself. So as you can see, the vision is right there. I don't need to read it for you, but it's there. And then there's some guiding principles as well, with a protective countryside, considering things like boundaries, agricultural practices, economic alliances, opportunities that we can branch out and look at how we can look at our countryside. Valued parks and nature, so looking at the network expansion of connections and public access, and really the edges between the natural and the parks with our urban areas. Vibrant communities, the mix of uses, placemaking opportunities and design, critical mass of people and activities, so you really have enough people to have the stuff that you're looking for. Thoughtful and creative growth. It's about that approach for complete communities and what neighborhoods look like, and the balance of density and design, so it's not all of one, it's not all of the other, but it's trying to create that balance. And also looking at efficient and effective connections between streets, walkability, active transportation, moving around and through, and also below ground to making sure our infrastructure works as well. So it's soft infrastructure, it's hard infrastructure, but making sure those connections happen. So it just gives a sense of where we are right now. Next slide. And as I mentioned, we are currently in phase 2 of the official plan, where we're looking at policy directions. So as you can see, there's an image there. And we have a display of, just to keep people engaged through the library, it's a physical display, and we also have some boards up in Town Hall. All of our information is on Let's Talk Grimsby. And we're planning additional engagement tools. So we have these 3 events right now. There'll be, I think, 9 or 10 policy direction reports over the course of this phase, and we're just refining some of the additional engagement tools we'll have. We do expect a number of surveys and polls and different ways of engaging the community, so that we can continue to try and get some more detail into what people want to see and where they want to go for this. So when we're developing the official plan, we have some clear direction when we have our draft. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Member Drew? Member Potter?
I know who I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, Terry, I'll give you an A star 100% for the actual document itself and the way it's laid out and the graphics and the verbiage. I think it's a stellar document in the way it's been formatted and presented. So thank you for that. And I'm giving you the credit. Don't look at anybody else. You're taking the credit. No, I know. But no, it's good. It's an easy read. It makes sense. So that's part of the communication. You and I have talked about communication in the past. This helps me. I've got lots of comments and questions, of course. We could go on for a long time. Just a couple, if I may, Mr. Mayor. The comment about climate change, declining biodiversity, declining water quality, declining air quality, not necessarily climate change, it's more environmental generally. I don't know quite how it happens, but those to me aren't necessarily climate change. They may be affected by climate change with regard to adaptation, but it's a bit of a throwaway statement saying declining water quality. Well, how, why, when? What does that mean? So I don't know if there's an educational element as well within this somewhere about what Grimsby's position is on the environment and on climate change and how we're going to address it, but they are separate elements. We have a habit of putting everything under climate change, and it's standard environmental things, like the quality of water. You could argue it's climate change, but in the short term, yeah, we're pumping sewage into the lake. Is that affecting it? That's environmental, that's not climate change. So those sort of things. I'd suggest on your vision, you make it shorter and snappier. It's too long. I mean, I could just say Grimsby is a town where everybody can find a place. That's my vision. That one sentence. When you get into the visioning, which is a big piece in its overarching, how you do a vision and mission, I'm not suggesting you need a tagline like, a place to grow or whatever it is, we have provincially, but it's a little bit run-on for a vision statement, and a vision statement is supposed to be aspiring to where you want to be, so that last sentence sort of grabs you on that one. Some challenges here, I think, on your productive countryside. You said innovative and sustainable agricultural practices. The ability for the town to, I don't know about support, but direct that is probably limited. You could say from a policy perspective, but sustainable agricultural practices, that's a provincial jurisdiction on how you do those sort of things. And I would ask how Grimsby as a town would support that if you're going to have it as a key area, because it's not clear to me at the moment. You get into the thoughtful and creative growth, leveraging economic opportunities. Again, that's a bit of a catch-all term. I think when you get into the document, it'd be useful to know what that means, because I don't, there's lots of things out there. The economic opportunities, I hope, would be so great, it would drive the support fiscally of all the other things. So I assume that there's going to be in the final document some fiscal analysis done on if we're going to grow businesses or growing the tax base or whatever we're doing to the fundamental revenue income for the town, how that could be redeployed and where it's going to come from. It's the sort of in and out. Personally, I find here, and I moved here, 3 years ago, and I came here. What concerned me was the lack of inventory. We do have turnover, but it's not huge, depending on what type of house you want. That was the biggest limitation I find, is the level of inventory, depending on where you want to be. 20, 30 years ago, I'd be on the Casablanca beach type thing. Now, we want a house with a pool. So those sort of things. The other thing that frightens me a little bit with regard to the economic growth is the lack of business infrastructure from an office, building, whatever you want to call it. You go on to MLS at the moment and look up office space or commercial space availability. It's thin. Office space, you try finding an office to rent for 600 square foot for less than $2,000 a month. It's not there. So some practical things there, and I don't know what the plan can do to help that, but it would be useful maybe to understand that. The last comment I have is, and I'm sort of being a little bit provocative here, we want the vibrant communities, we want the valued parks, we want the productive countryside, and we want the economic development. But a lot of the housing that we're doing is high density with no gardens. There's a bit of an ambiguity there. Everybody wants public space. So are we moving away from garden space, from houses, condos, that sort of thing, into saying, well, people don't need that. That's why we're going to go high density, potentially, because now we're going to offer more public spaces. Where's that trade-off? Where's the boundary there? I want a big garden personally, but not everybody does. Not everyone wants to manage it. So I'm seeing a little bit of a conflict there from that perspective in the way that the messaging comes from the people you've asked. We want the rural park space, but not necessarily attached to our house. So to me, there's something missing there, and I don't know quite how to address it, but it just jumped out at me a little bit.
Through the chair, I think that's where, especially this policy direction phase, is going to lead us, because, yeah, as I said, we're hearing some conflicting news there, and that's why we have to really deep dive into what people are saying. What do they mean when they're talking about housing? What can we talk about when we're looking at neighborhoods? What's appropriate where? What can we do? What is the range of housing? And that was one of the components we were talking about last week with the housing and affordability, is just the scope and scale of types of housing and what you need at different points in your life and what different levels of income quadrants can really afford and what's realistic. So that's why we're going into these policy direction topics and really trying to get people's ideas, like the breadth of ideas, to really explore some of these issues, because we need to have that. Because yes, the official plan cannot do everything. We know that. But it can definitely set a policy tone for future direction. It can set it for the zoning bylaw, and it can also outline potential other things that we could do, like other studies or other work that can be done. So even with agriculture, we need to enhance our policies. We know that the province has provided some direction. It's not fully included in our plan. So we need to enhance our plan to make those opportunities better, to consider potential for mixed uses so we can better balance our residential, commercial, industrial split. we have to enhance our policies. We have to look at that. And so that's what this section is really for in this phase of work, to level down a little bit in some of these details to try and flesh them out.
Just one follow-up, and I should know this, but I don't. I'm on the Region Agricultural Policy Committee. I don't remember, Mr. Mayor, who from the town is on that, if anybody. I assume there is, but that's interfacing with the region and their agricultural, and they're looking at forming a sort of more of an agricultural advisory committee for economic development and all that sort of thing, sustainability. So I'd encourage you to reach out to the region through whoever the member is. I think there's a member. I know West Lincoln has Albert Ritter, for example. I'm through it because of my role at my day job. I know some other people on it, but there's a lot of information there that may be useful to access.
Sorry, is the staff person Eric Axe for that? Okay.
It's one of these emails where there's about 50 people attached to it. You're not quite sure who is actually there, but I can flip it. I can look at it and I can flip it to Katie if need be.
Perfect. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Terry, I just wanted to touch back to the community outreach portion. I really appreciate having all the data of what people are saying, but just only 79 people that we've engaged with. So tell me about, you said you did the farmers market, Peach Kings. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the methods of engaging?
Go to page 5 of your of the What We Heard report. There was actually over 350 that have visited the Let's Talk project website. We talked to over 150 of the pop-up events. The 79 was just who answered the full survey. So there's a number of different numbers in this thing. So it's not the whole sum total of people we talked to. It's in different forums. It's just, the survey provided us a really great numbering system that we could actually give you, like, here's the balance of what people were saying. So it's a great tool to be able to say, of the people who took that survey, here's the proportion who thought this.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I just wanted to kind of touch back to we kind of spoke about earlier, plus what Harold said at the roundtable, and about how we need different housings for different periods of our life. And kind of me as a millennial, right now a condo might do, but that's a short period of time before I even want to, like Member Potter said, a backyard, a garden. And I just wanted to circle back to the missing middle, which seemed to be the theme of the OP talk. And from a policy perspective, what are some things that we can do to encourage the missing middle housing in Grimsby?
Through the chair, and that's exactly what these, one of our next conversations is about neighborhoods. So defining where, if there's additional neighborhoods that we want to consider in Grimsby, because they've really taken on a different form over time, and people recognize those as they see themselves there, that they might not see themselves somewhere else in Grimsby. But the next phase of the neighborhoods is where potentially there might be additional growth opportunities. So it's looking at what that missing middle is, like where can we put reasonably and foreseeably, maybe you have some of those back-to-back townhouses, maybe you have small walk-up apartments that do fit that context of that neighborhood. So that's a later conversation. We're trying to build to that conversation. We don't want to scare people away right away. We want to broaden the conversation to a variety of different ways of looking at it to make sure people aren't thinking, oh, well, this is what I want, because there might be other options that they can consider. And maybe it's appropriate here, maybe it's appropriate there. Like there's different ways that we can pull it in. So that's why we're trying to build with these policy direction reports to maybe identify areas that we might be able to intensify more, that we can provide. If you saw the scale in that policy direction report, it shows the scale from a single detached to a semi-detached to a townhouse to a row, all the way through to like your high-rise apartments. It has a whole bunch of different housing forms in there. So where can maybe some of those be appropriate? And how can we include those to consider that full range of the population?
Thank you, Terry. You also answered my next question, which was, are we starting to look at areas for these? But thank you.
Member Drew? No? Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your report, Terry. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Member Drew. Resolved that report PA 24-03, official plan review update, what we heard report and working draft of vision and guiding principles dated January 31st, 2024, be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have PA 24-04, proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file 26Z 162302 at 165 Lake. Manny, welcome.
Thank you. Is the consultant and are they on the? Brian's on? Yep. Okay.
Is he going first?
No. I'm going to go first.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure he's on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm Manny. I'm with the town, and it's good to finally see the committee. So, hoping this goes well. I'm here to discuss report PA 24-04 with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment for 165 Lake. Here today have also Ryan Ferrari for AJ Clark. They're the consultant for the file. And he'll be available to answer any technical questions or any questions the committee might have. Next slide. So here is the site in question. To the north, we have Lake Ontario. To the east is a neighborhood on Jacob's Landing. To the south is Lake Street. And across from that is the Grimsby wastewater treatment plant. And to the west is a single detached home. Next slide. So here is how the site is conceptually, or will be conceptually more or less arranged. There are 31 dwellings proposed with 7 single detached and 24 semi-detached. I just want to point out that this is a concept plan from the submission from September 2023, and that the details of this may change. Again, this report is solely for the zoning bylaw amendment, and that a draft plan of subdivision will be forthcoming, and that will the exact details of how the buildings and whatnot are on the site will may change due to that process. Next slide. So right now, like I said, we're currently at the point where staff has been provided a recommendation report, where staff has provided a recommendation report to the committee. The application was determined to be complete in November. At the time, this included both an application for the zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision. And again, just want to emphasize, this is today's meeting, and this report is solely to do with the zoning and the considerations that are within the realm of the zoning application. This is basically because we have a provincially legislated timeline for having the zoning bylaw amendment application before council within 90 days of the submission, and it's 120 days for the draft plan, so that's why it's still in the works. And of course, for a recommendation, we took in consideration from comments from the public and reviewing agencies through the reviewing process. Next slide. Just a quick overview. Niagara Region, on behalf of the town, reviews applications against relevant provincial and regional policy, including the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and Niagara Region's own official plan. Also, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the NPCA, they review planning applications to ensure developments are not impacted by flood and erosion adjacent to water bodies with respect to the Conservation Act. Next slide. And through the review, and Niagara Region and the NPCA are satisfied that the application is conforms with provincial and regional policy, and the NPCA views that it's also consistent with their own mandate. Additional details are within the comment matrix, which is within Appendix E of the recommendations report package. Next slide. So now I'll go and get into a little more into Grimsby's official plan. The subject area, so the subject site is within the low-density residential land designation. It's also subject to a hazard overlay on the north portion of the lands at the Lake Ontario shoreline, which I will go into a little more detail momentarily. And additional excerpts of the official plan are within Appendix C of the report package. Next slide. So I'll give a quick assessment of the development with respect to the principles of the official plan, primarily within section 2.2. Just noting that this numbering that you see that's the numbering of the provisions within the OP. Also, the highlighted are key points that this development we feel represents in maintaining. For example, we see the rezoning for the development, it respects the shoreline buffer and thus protects Grimsby's natural feature, the Lake Ontario shoreline. The zoning for compact built form also works to allow for a future public access to the Lake Ontario shoreline, which I'll get into a little bit shortly as well. Next slide. So basically, this we feel that this development works to create a wider range of housing types, which are ground-related, semi-detached, and smaller single-detached homes, overall representing a compact and efficient growth. Next slide. And as well, we view that the development complements the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. And we view that this development can coexist well with the established low-density residential neighborhood. And as I mentioned earlier, the zoning regulations that are proposed permit a balance of growth that is consistent with the form and an efficient density of the land use designation. And while also allowing for a future creation of a vital public amenity. Next slide. And just to put it all together, the development produces, like I said, ground-related single and semis compactly while coming in within the maximum permitted density of 25 units per hectare. And this is why this application doesn't need an official plan amendment. It's within the permitted density. Next slide. So now we're going to get a little more into the zoning. Currently, the zoning, the subject lines are zoned as ND, new development, or neighborhood development, and RD 2.35 on that existing single detached house portion of that site on the eastern portion. Next slide. So the rezoning, it intends to rezone the lands to RM1 zoning, multiple residential 1 zoning. And this is basically the zoning that allows for semi-detached homes. There's additional uses proposed, which are single detached, and a club use for the residents and guests. The club is a common area, which we specifically define in the zoning bylaw. Basically, it's permitted as a common element amenity on the condominium plan, which is for exclusive use of the condo residents and the guests. Next slide. So I hope this is clear to see. We'll leave this up for a bit. This is basically a visualization of the specific regulations that are in the chart in Appendix B for the zoning bylaw. But basically, it allows for a compact. The regulations allow for a compact bill form that is directly to support a future public amenity. What we have is smaller lots, narrower frontages, narrower side yards, smaller front and rear yards, and 60% lot coverage percentage. And this is basically to support a compact bill form that can balance the development with the public need. Next slide. And as mentioned earlier, there's an upcoming draft plan of subdivision application to be heard, which will finalize the details exactly, especially with regards to parkland dedication connected to that public access, directly related to that public access amenity. And yeah, this is where we would have draft plan conditions and whatnot from various agencies, including ourselves. Next slide. And after this is gone forward, we'll look at technical details, especially with regards to lighting, grading, servicing, geotechnical analysis, drainage, anything, I guess, due to with respect to groundwater, and basically finer grain technical studies. And next slide. So overall, staff recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment and that the draft bylaw be recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Manny. Just before we get questions, I just need a mover and seconder. Moved by Member Councillor Bradsey, and second by Member Drew. Member Drew, you have a comment or question?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for your presentation and the work that you're doing on this proposal. My understanding is subsequent to the December meeting, or maybe it just was not information available, that this is now moving, as I understand it, to a gated common element private street system. And if I understand what I see in the concept plan, it appears that the area, the current plan is to have that entirely either fenced or gated throughout. And I realize there's still discussion going on about access through that. The first question is, realizing there's still a discussion going on, is it going to be a requirement that there is access to the beach in the final plan?
Through the chair, that is something that we're pursuing. It's something that Parks and Recreation also would have as a condition, or we would have as planning as a whole would have a condition. This is the development is crucial to the link that is going to go through the development is crucial to the beach. So something that we are actively pursuing. It's more so maybe the arrangement of how the site kind of fits the public access and to what kind of width we're talking about, but that's something that we're going to be actively pursuing in the draft plan stage.
It's a further, and maybe I know that this comes, you haven't got a draft plan subdivision submitted as yet. For this to be a gated community, are there regulations related to access, especially for emergency, such as emergency vehicle, police, fire, that they can access through the whatever type of gates are there?
Yeah, so I'll have Ryan speak to this a little bit later, but basically access will be permitted from what the applicant has communicated to us. There's different ways about it. There could be a key code that is provided to emergency services, but also there could be an automated system where the gates automatically open when an emergency vehicle is nearby. So that's my understanding of it. So if Ryan from the applicant group can also chime in, that'll be appreciated.
Evening, committee members. Through you, Chair. I was going to speak to this in a brief presentation I prepared after this, but in terms of access for emergency services, that is coordinated with them for sure. I know Stephanie and Eric are on the call, and they have other communities like what's being proposed in Aurelia, and it's worked with emergency services with no problem, so I can report that back for sure. Unless Stephanie or Eric have anything else to add to that, that would be the answer. There's certainly access for emergency services.
Thank you. I have some follow-up issues related subsequent to the December 11th public meeting, if I can go through some of those fairly quickly. The environmental site assessment phase 1 was completed, and again, interested in the planned timing for the phase 2 environmental site assessment.
So what was the question? Is this directed at the applicant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I assume that's the developer has a plan for that.
Yeah, my apologies to the chair. I just didn't know who that question was directed to. So with respect to the phase 2 environmental site assessment, maybe I'll clarify this now. A draft plan subdivision has been submitted, to be clear. It's been circulated. It's been reviewed by staff and agencies. We've received a comprehensive list of conditions, including from the region, which takes care of the phase 2 environmental site assessment. And that'll be a condition of our draft plan of subdivision when it's ready to come forward. So that matter is going to relate to the draft plan of subdivision application, not necessarily the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know this will be part of the site selection, the site plan as well. In the last couple of months, has there been further consideration to including a green roof plan for this subdivision?
Thank you for the question, to you, Chair. The short answer is yes. I will say that it's going to be left for the site plan application, and the reason why is because we've had a lot of discussion about this development, and what seems to have taken over the past month or so is the access to the public beach. So that's something we've been focusing on for now, the access to the public beach, which we're certainly obliging the staff on. We're going to provide some sort of access. But at the site plan control stage, not only green roofs, but we're going to consider other sustainability measures as well. Again, as the committee could appreciate, when we're dealing with a concept plan that's sort of in flux, it's hard to focus on the buildings, but certainly at the site plan stage, we're we're going to get to that point, and we're considering green roofs and other sustainability measures. So I can report that back to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Member Drew's comments with the gated community and fire services. As I'm aware, I think this is the first gated community we've had in Grimsby. I don't know if there's anything we would need to wove into in terms of a bylaw or official plan, but it'd be probably wise to assume that this wouldn't be the last. But my main concern is kind of coming back to this clubhouse. What's the possibility, Ryan, of, say, a condo board in five years after construction turning that clubhouse into a unit?
Yeah, excellent question. So the shorter answer is I believe the way that the zoning bylaw has been crafted, and I think staff can correct me if I'm wrong, we're permitted club as a use. So here's what I can say. That's certainly not the intent. The reason why is because the market that that the proponents are selling this to or advertising this as a club. The second thing is, in the future, when a future condominium application comes into force and effect, the club is going to be part of the exclusive use area. So the club is going in. It can't just be turned into a unit. It'll be legally there through the condominium plan. If for whatever reason in the future, if 10 years go by and that club needed to be changed, they would need to amend the condominium. They would need to submit an application to the city. So there's controls to ensure that the club is going to stay. And I can report as of today that the proponent's not considering getting rid of the club or changing the club. They want it as an amenity for the residents. So I hope that answers your question through your chair.
Yeah, it did. Thank you, Ryan. I mean, we've had a few residents with concerns that, let's use me as an example. Let's say I live in that subdivision and I want to have a birthday party there. People are concerned about parking with the clubhouse. So in my opinion, honestly, I think it would make sense just to be a unit from the start. The only thing I could foresee is, let's say 10, 20 years from now, should the condo board have an expensive break wall repair, there's probably an avenue that they would look to come up with those funds. Just a suggestion. And then finally, just a suggestion too, I actually think the renderings look beautiful, but if we could kind of mix in some different colors and materials, just so they all don't look the same. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic proposal.
Thank you.
Member Potter.
Thank you, Chair. Just one clarification and then a couple of questions, if I may, and I'll try and direct it, but I'm not sure I'm going to get the right person, so feel free to jump in. I asked the question, I use page of our document 125 of 133, about the clarification of the life expectancy and maintenance of the wall. I think it's been answered, but my actual question was on the ongoing liability and who that would report to. So it wasn't a question of just the maintenance. I think you've answered it in the fact that the condo will be responsible for the continued maintenance, and assuming that infers liability is covered as well. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who was responsible, basically. I know I asked the question about the birds and whether they knew they were supposed to nest in the wall. I wasn't trying to be flippant at the time. Since they are species at risk, what's the ongoing plan for monitoring that they're doing well? Is there an obligation? I don't know any of the acts and that sort of thing with regards to species at risk. I'm not an expert in that. But how are we checking that they're doing what they should be doing and there's nothing detrimental in what's been going on? I don't know who to answer that question to, but I'll throw it out there.
Through you, Chair, maybe I can take a stab, and if staff want to add. It's certainly an excellent question. So the first recommendation that our consultant made is that we have to apply to the Ministry of Environment. It used to be called Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. I don't remember the exact name now, but we need to apply to the ministry for what's called an overall benefit permit. And we need to show the ministry, and this is all taken care of through our draft plan of subdivision, which will be coming through conditions, that we obtain this overall benefit permit. It's a process that happens with the ministry. We have to use science. Our ecologist is going to present how we're going to manage the birds, how we're going to construct the head wall, when we're going to construct it, the phases, et cetera. And the expectation will be that that overall benefit permit will need to be issued. The ministry needs to be satisfied that we're doing right by the species at risk before they clear that condition of draft plan. So in effect, what I'm telling you is what we're looking at today is one step in this development. There's still tons of work to do, overall benefit, namely, overall benefit permit, but there is a permit process that's outside of the town of Grimsby that the provincial ministry deals with. That is ongoing actually as we speak, but is going to take a little while to settle out. So I hope that answers your question. And I don't know if staff want to elaborate further on that, but that was my response. Thank you.
Through the chair, I have nothing further. That was a good explanation.
Thank you. So just another comment from experience, and I don't know, Ryan, I know you said a little bit about the gated community and access, and you're looking into that. So it's just, this is more an observation from my experience. I lived a few hundred yards away from a gated community in my previous place in Edmonton. The access by car obviously was limited because it was gated. Where it got extremely contentious and actually visceral was people walking through, because there was an alleyway through the gated community, and the people living in the gated community got extremely upset and visceral to anybody that dared to transit through just walking their dogs. So I'd encourage some consideration around that, and whatever signage is appropriate, there's also obviously privacy and you're in a gated community, but if there is access to the beach, for example, I would strongly suggest there's signage saying so that everybody's aware of what their obligations are and what people are allowed to do. So that's just an observation for me living in, I wouldn't say Edmonton because that's where it was, but the other thing, just on page 6 of 6, which is 129 of 133 of our document, with regard to whoever the public comment was with regard to the height of the building and their concern about overview. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on the fact that the person actually did go out and thank the team here, the development team, for their willingness to provide support and understanding and very cooperative. I think, for people to say that, I take as a tick in the box. My guess is it's not resolved, so I don't know what the resolution is, but there's obviously still some concerns there. There is a limit to what you can and can't do. I know it's within the bylaw and the various zonings and all that sort of thing, the height tolerances, but to me, it has a little bit of an embryonic, there's a problem still brewing here or not been fully dealt with, and I'd suggest that may be looked at a little bit more.
All right, seeing no further questions, moved by Member Bradsey, moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Member Drew. Resolved that report PA 24-04, proposed zoning bylaw amendment file number 26Z16-2302 at 165 Lake Street, dated January 31st, 2024, be received, and that 1, the draft bylaw attached to the report as Appendix B be submitted to council for approval, and 2, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement on the town's behalf. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you very much, Manny.
Thank you, committee members.
Up next, need a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Member Potter. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Member Potter. Resolved that the correspondence from the town of Lincoln be received. All in favor? That's carried. Is there any other business pertaining to the committee? Seeing none, next Planning and Development Committee meeting is scheduled for February 7th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.